Hello, everyone, and welcome along to another Toon Under podcast, the Southern Hemisphere's #1 Newcastle-related podcast. Back off the magnificent 4-1 victory, a pretty decent week all round for Newcastle United. It's getting pretty tasty now in the league. So joining me tonight is Jack, ready straight from a daddy-daughter day, introducing the little girl to a replica of Jordan Pickford at the local museum.
Yeah.
How have you been anyway?
Yeah, good. I've had a week off work, so it's obviously been a good week for Newcastle. And I went to see a dinosaur exhibition today in Brisbane, which I've been looking at for quite a while. My little girl was excited about that, and I had to explain to her that was indeed Jordan Pickford, who'd jumped on a quick flight over from the UK and got there quite quickly. She didn't know what I was talking about, but she seemed quite happy with it. So yeah.
No, that's good. But yeah, so literally we've had two pretty emphatic victories this week to celebrate off the back of that abysmal Aston Villa display. Safe to say that the team has bounced back. We've scored 10 goals in a week. It's just pretty mental. We're up to plus 32 goal difference now in the league. This watching football malarkey is getting quite good, isn't it, Jack?
It's not bad, is it? Yeah, it's not bad.
Get used to this.
I keep thinking I'm in some kind of dream, and I'm gonna wake up and it's gonna be October 2021, and we're gonna have just lost to Wolves, and Mike Ashley and Steve Bruce are gonna be there. I just keep having this horrible feeling that that's gonna happen, because this is like beyond sort of what you'd even. It's not even. It's been amazing since the takeover. Basically, It's just been relentlessly brilliant. Apart from that little blip around the cup final time and a couple of games last season. But yeah, it's like some kind of dream. Like it's not real. It doesn't feel real when you're watching it and when you're watching all these goals fly in. So, and it's good for us to be able to talk about it like this. It makes it just that bit better for us as well. So yeah, it's absolutely incredible at the moment.
Yeah, there's still a little bit of the psyche of Newcastle fans, I don't think, let us fully believe that this is actually happening. I know myself when Kane scored for Spurs at the weekend, we're 5-0 up and I'm still, here we go.
Yeah.
So it's going to take a while for us to get used to this, I think. So just before we crack on with the Everton review pod, what I would like to do is just take a quick shout out to the socials. So if you aren't already, please hit us up on YouTube or on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can hear us audio as well. Give us a like, thumbs up, 5-star review, leave a comment in the sections on YouTube. It really helps us out, and we're kind of building our following. But I'd also like to say that on Sunday night for us, it's an 11 o'clock kickoff. It is going to be a live watch along for us as well. So we're going to do that on Sunday night, given that it's a public holiday on Monday for us. So that's all worked out quite nicely. So hit us up on YouTube for that, and we'll sort of probably be kicking things off about half an hour before the game starts. And we will be doing an instant review, reaction video straight after that game as well. So on to the Everton game. Obviously it was a pretty early start for us. It's not too bad when you're getting up at 4:30 in the morning to watch these games when we're winning like that, but it was it's still an early and a long day for us. So quick chat about the match build-up, Jack. Obviously, quite a lot of focus. Everton are in some serious trouble. We've bought one of their more outspoken players, shall we say. There was a lot of griefs around that. There was a lot of pre-match build-up. And then, it kind of fizzled out a little bit through the game. But what did you make of the build-up for Anthony Gordon with the Everton fans?
Yeah, to be expected, really. Like they don't like him very much. We probably wouldn't like him if the tables were turned a bit. So it's fine. Everton have got a pretty passionate fan base in a lot of ways. Like you said, they're in big trouble. But what they did last season actually helped them a lot, where they got really up for it towards the end. There was a game against Palace where I think they confirmed survival in that game. And Goodison's a horrible, horrible old ground. Like, it's fallen to bits. I've been a few times to Goodison. You feel like there's going to be a fire or something when you're there, like, especially with all the fireworks going on as well. But it was a big build-up because it was a massive game for both teams, obviously for very different reasons. But it kind of, we were still on cloud 9 from the Spurs game a little bit as well. This came very quickly after that, so you're kind of just coming down from that, and then you have this to look forward to. And it's a good job Eddie and the staff will have forgotten about the Spurs game basically the day after and got them up for this, because it definitely needed to be the way it played out.
Well, it was interesting because I think we were all watching Bruno and Joelinton being interviewed on loop for a lot of the later part of the build up to this, and even Bruno, like they're all just so well drilled about, no, we're on to the next game now. We've got to look for the next game, and it's all about like the next win that we need to get on the board. So everyone's kind of bought into the philosophy of the club. I believe the club went in the back entrance to get into Goodison after the rather crazy bus parade through a smoke-inhaled Everton support. What was going on with that?
I don't. It seems to be something they do when they get to this stage, because every season they're in a relegation battle at the moment. So they just seem to have a bit of a call to arms where they get, and they've got a lot of crazy fans. They're working class Scousers, a lot of them. So they're just fully up for it. And they obviously did that again. Like I said, it was really successful last season where they really fired the atmosphere up, and it worked. To be fair, in this game, it really did work in the first half. I think we'll talk about it, but I think the Everton players fed off the frenzied atmosphere there was. And we're no strangers to this as Newcastle fans. At St James's, when it gets going, it really gets going, and it's a really big advantage. So, Everton were within their rights to try and fire it up and get a bit of an atmosphere going, and it's going to help them. I think. I know that they lost this game, but I think, if they can do what they did in this game in the remaining home games, they've got hard games, but I think they could potentially get some points. It was hard, and it was because of the atmosphere that the club and the fans had created.
Yeah, I mean, we know all too well from the home games at St James's Park what a good solid crowd and the atmosphere behind the team can actually generate for the players. Like they really do feed off that. So we're going to go on to the actual game now. I want to have a quick check through some of the team lineups. So we'll have a look through our Everton team here. So Pickford, old T-Rex in goal, Godfrey, Tarkowski, Keane, and Mikolenko in defence. Garner, Onana, Doucouré, McNeil, and Iwobi with Calvert-Lewin up front, pretty much on his own for a lot of the game, I would say. But the wingers were definitely bombing on as much as they could. Decent bench there as well. Few sort of semi recognizable names in there. Did you see any? Where's your kind of thought process in terms of where the main dangers of that team are?
Calvert-Lewin scored. I think he scored 5 goals against us in his career, so he's always a danger. Obviously, it's been against us when we've been shit, not when we've been good. But Iwobi had a really good game against us last season as well, and he scored the winner. But really, their team's pretty workmanlike. Really, Godfrey's not even a right back, and they've got 3 ex-Burnley players in there. They've got Tarkowski and McNeil, who got relegated last season, and then Michael Keane, who they signed. One of the players they signed for crazy money about 4 or 5 years ago.
They've got some pretty big money signings in that squad. I mean, Iwobi, I think I was reading, was 45 million or something
like that. Yeah,
it's like 10 million more than Bruno.
I think their team was actually the same value or just a little bit less value than our team, which just shows you.
We've got some stats for that later on in the podcast as well. So we'll
so it just shows you kind of the way the way the clubs have been run. But Craig posted the Everton team and our team for the game last season, which we lost in, and it immediately made us feel better because our team looked pretty weak. Really, we had Ryan Fraser and Chris Wood playing, and Everton's looked about the same. So that made us feel like we should get something from this because we were a bit unlucky to lose that one last season.
Yeah, last season was a weird one, apart from the idiot trying to choke himself on the goalpost that really interrupted our momentum. I think the big difference was probably Richarlison. That they clearly fed off him. He he was their shithouse, I guess you would say, last season. He did everything he could to kind of win free kicks and keep them in games. Without him there, they just didn't seem to have that same drive and determination. And to be honest, I've seen a few Everton fans since on some of their podcasts and some of their YouTube videos suggesting that they probably were missing Anthony Gordon as an option, just to kind of give them a bit of drive. So yeah, it's interesting how things work out. So we'll quickly go on to the Newcastle side. Nick Pope in goal, Trippier, Shah, Botman, and Target at left back. So that's one change. Bruno, Longstaff, and Willock make up the pretty much tried and tested midfield three now. And then Joelinton, Callum Wilson, and Miggy Almiron make up the forward line. So three changes from the team that absolutely decimated Spurs. Pretty much guaranteed that we were going to make some substitutions, some sort of changes to that lineup, given the frequency of games that we're having at the moment. But did you see anything wrong with those substitutions? Pretty much expected in terms of the front line. But obviously the big surprise, I think, for most of us was Matty Target starting.
Yeah, I think that was a bit of a surprise. I think it was because Byrne had been unwell, I think the commentators were saying. So yeah, like you said, I kind of expected one or two changes just with the Southampton game coming up. But if you score 2 goals in a game, which is what Murphy and Isak did, and then you're on the bench, you've got to be a bit disappointed about that. But because of the team spirit that Eddie Howe has fostered, and the fact that we've got this no dickhead policy, and everybody's just playing for each other, means that they were quite happy to drop out. And obviously, they both came on and contributed. It's nice for Callum Wilson to get a start because he's been absolutely on fire lately. He was dodgy after the World Cup. I don't think he was fit right up until that international break, and after that, he's been absolutely flying. So we might talk later about whether both of them might get a start together at some point.
It's just nice to see that the bench is starting to fill out a little bit, and this is before we encounter a potential summer spending spree, I guess you would say. We're all expecting it if we do manage to get top 4 and get Champions League, but it's good to see that we've actually got options off the bench now, isn't it?
Yeah, we've talked all season on this podcast about the weak bench and the squad depth, but because Eddie has turned Jacob Murphy into an effective Premier League player, he's now not a weak link on the bench, and you've still got Richie and Manquillo on there, who probably won't be around next season. But when you've got Gordon, Isak, it's a strong bench, and we can make changes from the bench now, which we weren't able to do earlier in the season.
Yeah, it's a nice thing to have when you can see 60 minutes out in the game and then bring you sort of two of your most informed players off the bench at the moment, Isak and Murphy. Cool. So we'll start having a roam through some of the game. Obviously, look, we've had the game pretty much started off as we expected. Everton were properly wound up for this game. They came out of the blocks pretty quickly. They threatened the goal without necessarily creating any chances in the first half, apart from the one big talking point, which we'll get to. But how impressed were you that Everton started the way they did? Because I know a lot of people have said that they haven't had any heart. Their fans are complaining that they've got no drive or determination or no pride in their performances. But the Everton I saw in that first half were fully giving everything that they had for the cause. They were well up for the game. Now, look, whether or not you count lack of quality in the squad or just things not going their way or lack of confidence given the recent run of results, but you look at that performance and they went out there to leave everything on the pitch in that first half. So how impressed were you with their performance in the first half?
Well, the little clubs get excited when the big clubs come, don't they? And they get up for it easily. So, no, I'm joking there. Everton are not a little club, but they're obviously struggling this season. But I wasn't really surprised at the way they came out because I thought that was going to happen. And I think the Eddie Howe and the team expected that as well. Yeah. It's Sean Dyche. It's Goodison Park. Yeah. It's an evening game. They're absolutely desperate for points. So... But yeah, they were really quite, like you said, they were good. They were physical, they were aggressive, they were pressing a lot, and they were forcing us into mistakes. And we didn't really cope with it as well as we could have done. But they still weren't creating too many clear-cut opportunities. They had quite a few shots from distance, which didn't really threaten. So I think it was more the fact that we were a little bit wobbly. We were giving the ball away a little bit, which I think was causing us problems. But it was because of the intensity and that they were playing with, and the players for Everton were feeding off the energy and the excitement from the crowd. But you just had a feeling like that they couldn't do this for the whole game, which was what I felt at the time. I think they did well to maintain it for as long as they did, but I knew that if we could ride this out a little bit, and if we could get in without conceding 1 or 2 goals, we should be all right. And I think that's the way it went in the end.
Yeah, it certainly looked like they were. Newcastle were trying to ride the storm in that first half and just kind of like stay with them, and hopefully they would burn themselves out, which, as it turns out, they did. I was disappointed with Miggy's performance. He looked a little bit off the pace. He was giving the ball away a lot, but he probably wasn't the only one in that first half. And I think you've touched on it, where Everton were in our faces. We weren't getting any time on the ball, and Miggy's just come back from an injury layoff, so maybe a little bit rusty.
Yeah, probably. He's not fully fit, and he's not the best under pressure anyway. A lot of the time, he's better when he's got the ball and when he's running at people. But yeah, I don't think he's fully fit, and it was quite a hard game for him to come into. He actually struggled. I remember he struggled in this game last season as well. So maybe it's something about that kind of frenetic crowd that he struggles with. And he did have a difficult game, but luckily we had substitute to bring on for him.
No, that's fair. So we ended up opening the scoring. Joelinton again coming to the rescue with an absolutely magnificent run. What's your thoughts on the? I mean, because I wouldn't say it was against the run of play as such, but we were starting to kind of get into the game a little bit more before he made that little sort of jinky run. Sort of batted it out, and Pickford's. Sort of pushed the ball away into his own defender, I think it was, that then ricocheted out with Callum Wilson on hand to tuck it away. But that was kind of what we really needed at the time. I think we were under that bit of pressure from Everton. But I mean, we couldn't have asked for a better goal to answer that sort of pressure that we were getting.
Yeah, so it was against the run of play in a way, but also it wasn't a surprise because we've got quality. So I think we always knew that we were going to end up getting chances in this game. And we know that Joelinton's on form. And it was a good pass, actually, from Miggy to pass it out wide to begin with. I think it went to Target, who then gave it to Joelinton. But when you've got Wilson in form like this, there's a ball bobbling around the box, around the penalty spot, he's not going to miss that. So even though they had been on top, it still wasn't a surprise, really, that we'd started to claw back a little bit of possession by then as well. And I think once we start to get possession, we can start to create chances. It's just what we've been doing lately. It was one of those times where we'd maybe had 1 or 2 forays forward, but nothing had come of it. But Joelinton's done this a couple of times now, where he's opened the scoring in a tough game for us. That's essentially unlocked the opposition. Didn't really work that way. Everton did have one massive opportunity. Dominic Calvert-Lewin put through on goal, just a little bit left of centre. Through on his own. We were looking for the offside flag. He went through. Really nice finish. I think it probably maybe could have been a little bit better defending, but as it turns out, VAR came in, checked it. It was given offside, so it didn't count. You're happy with the offside call on that one? Obviously. I obviously was, but like being totally honest about these situations, I don't like these marginal offsides because the offside law was not brought in to stop this. Like Calvert-Lewin is getting no advantage over Sven Botman, who was on the other side of the pitch, just by his armpit being in front of Botman's left foot. So we've been a victim of this as well this season with Isak at Liverpool. I think we can talk about offside. Nobody even knows what the rule is anymore, really. But I think
we'll come back to it for hours in a minute as well.
But I think getting some kind of daylight rule. I know they tried that before, but then that gives the attacker the advantage. Like, you're still going to get these problems because there's still going to be dispute over whether there's daylight or not, and drawing the bloody lines on the pitch and all sorts. But I think you have to pair it back to what the actual spirit of the law is, which is to stop people goal hanging, you know? And that's not goal hanging. That's a run that's been mistimed by like 0.1 of a second, you know? So I know we benefited from this, and obviously I was very pleased about that. But I think it's something that they need to look at, because you're going to get more goals, you're going to get more attack and action if you give the attacker the benefit of the doubt, I think, in these situations.
I think the problem is that you're going to end up with strikers who are pushing forward on the front foot with defenders who are maybe trying to push up, and if you start trying to blur that line, I mean, certainly, you know, they as you said, they tried the daylight rule, and then the refs all bottled it, and then some were giving it, some weren't, and it was lasted about 2 weeks or something like that before they went, now we're going to go back to the normal rules. So then in at halftime, 1 goal up. We had a couple of half chances towards the end of the half, but all in all, I think we were pretty happy to go in a goal up and, you know, get a little bit of a breather and get Eddie having a little bit of a chat to the players.
I think it was relief more than anything. The commentators were saying Everton would be pleased to get in, but I always wanted us to get in, you know. We had the goal. We needed to just get in and calm things down. And that's what I kept on thinking through the first half, was let's just try and slow it down a bit. Let's try and calm it down. I think Trippier and Bruno, who were the ideal candidates to do that, they tried it a bit, but their radar was off a little bit, and they were giving it away a bit. So it was good to get in at half time. You know that if we score 1 goal, we're probably not going to lose the game. And I wouldn't have been too disappointed with a draw in this game if you'd have offered it beforehand. But yeah, it was good to get in, good to be ahead, because Everton really threw everything at us. And I think they were a bit unlucky, really, to go in behind, but who cares?
So Eddie's obviously got stuck into the team, got them a little bit more organised. They've come out in the second half and pretty much took on where they left off at the end of the first half. They looked sharper, they looked more on the ball. Everton kind of weren't quite at the races to start the half. Willock, who I thought had a very quiet first half, didn't really do a lot, gave the ball away a few times, came out like the Willockinho that we've come to love in the last few months of his time here. He was absolutely at his best, had a couple of chances himself, made a couple of chances for other people before he took his player on the left-hand side, and I think it was Godfrey. And this would not be the first time or the second time or the last time that Godfrey was skinned on that side. They were clearly targeting him in the second half to good effect as well. Willock's gone past him, put the ball through, put an absolute peach of a cross in, and Joelinton's there unmarked in the middle of the box just to nod it into the ground and into the goal. So great second goal, just what we needed. Kind of almost took the wind out of the sails of the home fans, scoring just after the break like we did.
Yeah, so that was after 70 minutes, wasn't it? And I had to rewatch the second half earlier because both of my daughters were awake by this point at 6:15 in the morning. So I was on nappy duty and breakfast duty and all sorts. So I was kind of half watching it in real time. But I think I watched it back, and Everton was still they weren't too bad, really. Like, they had a few half chances still in that especially the first 15, 20 minutes of the second half. But then as soon as that goal went in, Willock has been brilliant, like especially in the latter part of this season. And we talk about his assist against Spurs, which I want to talk about forever. But this was another brilliant assist. You know, like, it's his pace, it's his directness. The little dinky stood up to Joelinton, and then you've got Big Joe, who's in scoring form. So I think as soon as that went in, you kind of knew, like, you knew they weren't going to get back into it from that point. I think we knew it was 3 points.
Yeah, I think like they again huffed and puffed a bit in the second half to start with. It was a lot more even. It was kind of an end-to-end game for the second half, where it was definitely played more in their half in the first half of the game. So to me, Willock's just added that ball control. He's always had the pace. He's always had the drive. He's not scoring the goals now, and it's like this is seeming insane to talk about given his start a club when he was on loan. But if he can add that finishing back into his game, because he is getting chances and he's just skying them, or he's not getting them. And there was one effort that he had in this game where he kind of cut in and just curled it around, and was an absolutely fantastic save from old T-Rex. But yeah, the wind definitely went out their sails after that second goal went in, and I think they know they're not scoring goals. They know we don't concede many goals, so it's like, well, yeah, look, 1-0, we're probably still in it. 2-0, yeah, I think that's all she wrote. And you could kind of see their heads drop a little bit, which I guess that's probably what the Everton fans are focusing on. And disappointing, which you can understand as well.
I think the crowd let their heads drop at that point as well, which is understandable. There's only 20 minutes to go. With Willock, like, you can just see he's being coached. He's got all the attributes. He's always had the attributes, but he went on that scoring run when he signed for us. But then the following season, he was not good. He was really struggling when Bruce was still there. But he's got confidence now, and he's just being coached. Like, Eddie Howe is coaching him to levels which I didn't think he was capable of. And like you said, that volley he had would have been an outrageous goal. So he's gonna keep doing this and popping up, and he will pop up with goals and assists as well. He's such a valuable player now.
Yeah. So then number 3 got on the board with an absolute rocket from Callum Wilson. Took the ball on the edge of the box, just literally turned his body and launched it into the top corner. It kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, we were obviously dominating the game by this stage, but for him to pull that sort of goal off, it was almost like he was having a competition with Murphy, going, "Oh, if you can do it, I can do it better," sort of thing. It was a fantastic finish for him. Gave Pickford absolutely no chance, and there's a lot of little photos going around on the group chat where people are having a little bit of a laugh at Pickford not quite getting to that ball.
Not quite.
What did you make it? What did you make of that one? Because I thought that was an absolute peach of a strike.
Well, Bruno just ran through the midfield, so I think this is what Everton fans are probably a bit upset about, the fact that the midfield, I think they were pushing a bit, and Bruno just sort of ran through them. The ball was a little bit behind Wilson, but he just had a touch, and that's his confidence. It's his confidence. Like, you don't try that shot, and if you're not full of confidence, and it's a bit like what I think Dimmy was saying for the Willock assist for Spurs. Like, you don't try that if you're not confident, and if the game state doesn't allow that. But he was just confident. He just curled it into the top corners. Absolutely beautiful goal. Wilson, the first one was like a typical Wilson goal. The second one was just, I think he's been watching Isak and training after his goal against Brentford as well. But it's another amazing goal of the season contender, really, which our team is having a competition of their own at the moment.
Well, I tweeted out today, it's like the highlight video at the end of the season is going to need to be a box set at this rate.
It was amazing.
So then, obviously, not to be outdone, Isak on the pitch goes on what can only be described as one of the best Henry-esque runs in the Premier League's history. Literally takes on half of the Everton defence on his own, took the ball on halfway, ran up the pitch, basically beat 3 defenders before he got to the byline. And then I think all of us were thinking, well, yeah, this is going out for a corner or something like that. Managed to keep it in, beat another 2 defenders before dinking it over into the other side of the box for a Murphy tap-in, who literally could not believe his luck and ran over, and the whole team just recognized straight away what Isak had done there. And it was just something that you just don't expect from a Newcastle player since Beardsley, really. But it was one of those things where there's been a little bit of talk about, there's a bit of Henry in Isak, and that, I think, was probably the first time that it was just like, holy crap, yeah, we've got a player on our hands here.
Well, he did something kind of similar against Southampton in the Cup, although it wasn't quite as jinky. But this one was funny because obviously they just scored direct from a corner, and it was like,
sorry, I missed that. Sorry,
yeah. So it was like,
I'm trying to block that out. It was like literally, straight.
So it was like,
from the corner.
That's a shame they've scored. And then the commentators were still talking about that, and Isak had it on the on the left. And I've counted because I've watched this obviously quite a few times, and I've counted the touches. He had 21 touches right in this dribble. Almost every single one had to be perfect because he was either close to a defender or he was right on the touchline. and he somehow managed to. Obviously, the defending is not good, but how do you? It's hard to defend it other than kicking him or clattering him. And
he's got the ball on a string, and at pace. It's like, how do you defend that?
He beat the same players twice each, and then he got to the byline, and there was a touch on the byline to take it away from the last defender, and it was just perfect, because if he'd have overran it, the keeper would have got it. If he'd have put it too much, it would have gone out. And then he's just Hatton Ben Arfa scored a goal for us in the cup against Blackburn Rovers, and it's a travesty that there's only one camera angle of this goal, because I was at that game and I remember watching it, and it was absolutely astonishing. It was like Beardsley, and this was similar to that, only better because he had less space.
Yeah.
When you see a 6'4" striker doing this, like, we knew he was good, but who knew he was this good? Like, you can see the comparisons with Henry, and he's only just turned 23. Henry was 22 when he signed for Arsenal, so he was a similar age. Yeah. So if Ice Cold Alex can have the same impact for us that Thierry Henry had at Arsenal. Wow.
Yeah, but it was exciting years ahead.
Incredible.
It's worth noting that we've literally got a very good young spine of the side now. We've got Botman, Bruno, Isak. I know we all know the song by now, but they have literally that's pretty scary. That's like, I'd say maybe 4 or 5 years for Bruno at the top of his game. Easy 7 to 10 for the others. That's got to be pretty scary for the rest of the teams in the league.
It's 130 million well spent, isn't it?
For sure.
It's money. It's money well spent on good scouting, on good characters, and who are being properly coached. And you see that on the pitch. Yeah.
Yeah, 63 million Isak, as Keegan and I were referring to him after
Thomas Frank likes to say
Thomas Frank's endless tirade about our spending, which we will come to as well, because I've got some good points on that. It's like it looks like an absolute bargain at this point. We've had Real Sociedad's pants down with that price.
Well, it's a lot of money, but he's a world-class player. He's a world-class footballer. He's on the level. He's maybe behind Haaland, but he's definitely on that Nunes. Sort of. Yeah. He's the next level down, if you can even say that. Just because Haaland's a freak,
Yeah.
But he's
brilliant. I was saying this the other day though, because Haaland's definitely a more clinical, better goal scorer. He's a finisher. He's a fox in the box. He just gets the balls that he has no right to get to because he's so lanky and he's so quick and he's so strong. Isak's definitely a better all-round player though. So it's not just about the goals. Isak's probably going to end up with more assists as well.
Well, if he gets given the assists, and like today, which outrageously wasn't given to him because it hit a defender. But
best assist of the century, and he's not given it.
I suppose it's what comes naturally to those players. So Haaland's a traditional number 9 who just does everything really well. Isak kind of drifts out into the channel a little bit more, which is why the comparisons with Henry are so striking. So they're different sort of strikers that could probably play together, and they would win every game they ever played. If Man City want to sign him, that would be £1 billion, please. But it's exciting for the Premier League to have players like this.
It is, and it's exciting that we know we've got owners who are going to fight to keep hold of our best players now. Like, if that was Ashley still there at the club and we managed to find a gem like him, you'd be sitting there counting the days before he was sold for a profit, and then have a rummage in the bargain bin in France or something for another replacement like Riviere or something for Andy Carroll. So the scoring was finished there at 4-1. There was an absolute wonder strike from Fabian Schär that I still have yet to figure out exactly why it was given offside, because Dan Burns offside when the ball's played in, doesn't actually get anywhere near it, doesn't touch the ball. The defender heads it back out. Fabian Schär takes it on the wing, dribbles it back inside. The crowd urge him to shoot, which he gratefully obliges, and it literally nestles in the bottom corner of the goal. And, absolutely cracking strike, deserves a goal. And for some unknown reason, we've now got a completely different interpretation of the offside rule yet again, that fans are left frustrated with, not knowing what the rules are.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know why. It was presumably because he was deemed to be interfering with play, but which phase was that? Or is it? It was only pulled back obviously because we scored a goal from it. But like, how has he in any way gained any kind of advantage from
No.
that? And how has Fabian Schär gained any advantage from it?
Yes,
It's
exactly.
like it just doesn't really make any sense. So like, it's a real it's something they're gonna have to look at. And luckily, it just didn't impact us. It would have been nice to score 5 goals again, but that's just greedy, really.
Well, realistically, though, I mean, we dominated the last part of the game. We had a few extra chances. It could have easily been 7 or 8. I think. Again, I mean, we've missed chances that we could have and probably should have scored. So you know, the XG is still there. We're still creating chances that we're not tucking away. But luckily, we've got enough stuff that we're creating plenty of chances now, and there's a fair few of them starting to find the net now. So that's good to see. We'll pull up some stats for that game. The shots for both teams are actually pretty interesting reading. We'll come back to that in a minute, but like the possession, 39% for Everton, 61% for Newcastle. I actually found that really interesting because I felt Everton had a lot of the ball in the first half. So either they didn't have as much as we thought. Newcastle did have it, but then gave it away in silly areas, or Newcastle's completely dominated that second half to end up with that.
Well, even in the first half, the stats flashed up after about 20 minutes, and Everton had 6 shots by then. We'd only had 1. But even then, we were out possessioning them. We had more possession. So I think it seemed like they had more because there was, but they were mainly just running at us when we had the ball, and we were giving it away. But then, because of a lack of quality for them, they were giving it away as well, or they were having long range shots, which didn't amount to anything. So. Like they're not a possession team. We're not necessarily a possession team either. But when we've just got better players, so we're more likely to keep hold of the ball. And it wasn't really there. It's never really been Dyche's kind of game to try and keep the ball. It's more about direct long balls and putting pressure on.
Yeah. So 15 shots to Newcastle, 13 shots to Everton. That's actually pretty even, Stevens. Shots on target 5 to Everton, 8 to Newcastle. It kind of shows that Everton were having chances, but as you said earlier on, a lot of them were just like, long shots from range, either straight down Pope's throat or skied out or, sent out wide or something like that. So we weren't really getting any clear-cut shots on goal.
No, not really. I think they did all right to get the shots away, and it's inflated the stats a little bit. But a lot of the time we just don't concede good chances very often. And when we do, there's Nick Pope, and Pope did make a really good save in the second half from Calvert-Lewin. I think the stats sort of that they're inflated on their side, but I think they did play quite well for 70 minutes. I do. I think I don't think it was a 4-1 game in the end because the last 20 we just ran through them. But for 70 minutes, it was really hard going for us until we scored that second goal. So I think they did well, and I think the stats do reflect that to an extent.
I think we're just starting to see that our fitness levels as a team are just through the roof, and there's not many teams can match us for a full 90 minutes with the pace and the intensity that we're willing to play out. And I think that's what happened here is that the Everton gave their everything. The tanks just emptied on 70 minutes, and then we had Murphy and Isak to bring off the bench, and that's the difference that we've got at the moment. The frustrating thing for me again though is that corner count. 3 corners to Everton, but 14 for Newcastle, and we still yet to score from a corner. I don't understand why we've got a team of giants and we don't seem to be good from set pieces.
I think I read that Jason Tyndall is the set piece coach, so I think we should just get a set piece coach. I think we need to get a good set piece, and we did a couple of them where we were playing it short, I think, early on, because we did have corners in the first half. But you've got Botman and you've got Byrne and Joelinton, and we're a big team, so I think we need to work on that. That's one clear area for improvement for next season.
Yeah, for sure. So I had a chuckle to myself earlier on because with that Isak goal, I kind of thought that goal in his assist, his non-assist. Sorry, he basically went on this mazy run, and I think that's how ASM sees himself when he's doing what he does, but it just doesn't quite look the same. I bring that up because there's been a little bit of sort of talk where Maxi may be out for the rest of the season. At the moment, the way we're playing, we've adapted. We're not really relying on him anyway, so I don't see it being a problem. But do you reckon that's his last game for the club?
I think it probably is. I think he's had 2 good spells of football this season of a couple of games. He had one at the start and then one before he got injured this time. He's unlucky. I don't know whether his body can handle the way that he's being asked to play. Yeah. The evidence would suggest that it can't. I think he'd be an incredible impact sub, or to start in some games if he wanted to stay around. But I'm not sure he'll want to do that. I think he'll want to go and be the main man somewhere, and that's fine. He's been a good player for Newcastle over the years, but I think we said at the start of this season that this is a big season for him, because I think there's questions over whether he fits into the system. And we definitely said in January when Gordon came in, this is a really big second half of the season. Yeah. And maybe it's not his fault. Maybe it's his body. Maybe it's his injuries. But he hasn't taken the opportunity that he's had, which is a shame. But if he wants to stay around and if he's happy to do that, and if he's not going to rock the boat in any way, then great, let's keep him. But like I said as well, I think we need to sell players for money as well. We need to start selling players, and he's probably our biggest saleable asset that we've got.
Yeah, I mean, he's already been sort of quoted in the media saying it's like, oh, I want to go somewhere where they've got my best interests at heart. And so it kind of feels like he's almost got one foot out the door, which, look, I like him. I've liked watching him here. I mean, he pretty much single-handedly kept us in the league under Bruce because he was our only offensive outlet. But yeah, it does seem that even if he's kind of willing to stay, his body's just not quite capable of playing at the intensity that we do right now. So, maybe a slower league like, Serie A or something like that, maybe he'd go there, and AC Milan are supposedly after him. If we can get 30 million for him, I'd snap their hands off. I think it would be a good deal all round. I think he gets to go there and be the center of attention that he wants to be, that sort of main man player, which I don't think he's going to be here. And yeah, I think if you look at us getting a little bit of extra money in, that offsets a bit of FFP. We get to kind of go out and splurge a bit more money on a replacement like we've discussed, Diaby or someone like that. So, so lastly on that game, before we touch on a bit of a Southampton preview, that is the league table. We are sitting in 3rd spot, 32 games played, plus 32 goal difference, 62 points, and we are now. What's that? That's 8 points clear of Spurs, who are sitting in 5th. We will touch on at the end of this the upcoming fixtures, because it's quite an interesting read for the top 6 clubs there. Well, I say top 6, 6 clubs that are in the race for that top 4 spot. That's looking pretty good. It's starting to get to the point where we can dream, isn't it?
I was just thinking about, this is where I am dreaming, and Newcastle are 3rd in the league, because am I in 2001 or something, or is this, this is 20 years ago? Yeah, no, it's got to the point now where it would take a collapse from us, which we haven't had this season. We've had a blip this season, and it was the Aston Villa game, and that's it. Yeah. We haven't had any more. We had the little issue around the cup final, but that was for understandable reasons, I think, and we had hard games around then. And there was a period where we were drawing too many games, but I think it would take a collapse from here. And I've been obsessively looking at the points that teams can get, and we'll have a look at the fixtures in a minute. But it's going to take something. It's going to take something for us to not finish in the top 4 from here.
So here we've got the run in for the 6 sides in contention. So Newcastle, we have Southampton at home, Arsenal at home, Leeds away, Brighton at home, Leicester at home, and Chelsea away. That's a pretty good run of games for us. Given that everything is in our hands, we need a maximum of 71. We need probably 71 points to make sure we qualify, given what the other teams have got. That's 9 more points. Surely that's doable with that run of games.
Brighton can get 73 points if they win all of their games, but that's unlikely. So
that's
if we
assuming
we
can beat them as well, though.
Yeah. So if we can get 12 more points from these games, if it's 4 wins, then that's it completely guaranteed, because that's 74 points. So 4 wins, we've got 4 home games and we've got 2 away games. On form, we should do it. We should do that. We shouldn't need to be worrying about Brighton or Liverpool or anything, but we're Newcastle fans, so we are. And
there's always that doubt.
I'm worried about Liverpool because I think they're going to win all of their last 6 games, and they
have a pretty easy run, it has to be said.
Yeah, and they've got 3 games at home, and we've got Southampton at home, but they play 2 extra games before we play Arsenal, so they could be 3 points behind us by the time we play Arsenal, albeit we would have a game in hand. So they've done this before, where they've gone on a run and they've gotten the Champions League right at the end of the season. I hope it's going to be too big an ask for them, but I'd feel a lot better if they just drew a game or 2. I'd feel so much better about everything, because I think that really would be it, because I can't see Brighton. They've got really hard fixtures coming up and we've got to come to St. James's. So I think it's Liverpool. And I think Liverpool could get 71 points, which means we would probably have to get 71 or 72.
Yeah. You got to think, if we get 71, we're going to still have a better goal difference than them, unless they go on a monumental goal scoring run. I guess the big thing for me is looking at Aston Villa are well and truly in form, but they've actually got some pretty tough games, and they're playing all the other sides that are in the race almost, Liverpool included. So I think that Liverpool-Aston Villa game, it's at Anfield, but second last game of the season, that could be absolutely huge for both clubs.
Hopefully by then it won't matter for us, because we've kept winning. That could be a big but hopefully it'll be for who's going to finish 5th or 6th by that point, and we can stop worrying about
we've secured 3rd.
Man United have not been great lately either. So and they threw away a 2-goal lead at Spurs this morning. So they've got to go to Brighton for their game in hand next week, and they've got a hard away game at West Ham. They've got to play Villa at home this weekend, so they don't have any fit defenders that are any good, so that could be one to watch out for. But they can get a total of 81 points, which is 1 point more than what we can get at this stage. But we've firmly got our eyes on 3rd, I think.
I think our destiny's in our own hands. It's as simple as that. And I just don't want to go away to Chelsea on the last game of the season, needing a result and hoping that Liverpool, who are playing Southampton away on the last game of the season, who will most likely be well and truly relegated by then. That could be the tricky weekend. Now, look, Chelsea's probably all but given up the ghost as well. I think they're sending all their players off for surgeries and stuff at the moment, which probably indicates that they've written the rest of the season off and they don't really care anymore. But it's still one of those games where they do have quality in the squad, and I just don't want to be relying on an away game down at Chelsea to secure our top 4 spot. But
even to get to that point, though, we would have to probably lose games that we think we shouldn't lose. So Leeds away isn't that hard on paper. They're not in good form. So I think if we just don't want to be dropping points in one of these home games against Southampton or Leicester, really.
Brighton, I mean, as good as Brighton are playing, we do have a fantastic track record against them at St. James's Park, and St. James's Park is an absolute fortress at the moment. So you've got to be liking our chances, surely.
Anyone objectively looking at this already thinks that it's done and dusted, and that Newcastle and Man United are going to be in the top 4. And even I was on a Liverpool forum out of interest, and they were not even thinking about Newcastle. They none of them think they're going to get top 4, and if they do, they think it might be Man United. But that's like extreme wishful thinking from them. So if we hadn't been burned by all of the years of following Newcastle, and if we weren't so stressed about this because we're not used to it, we just think that's fine. We're going to finish top 3rd or 4th, and it wouldn't be a problem. But it's just because it's so unusual for us that we're kind of obsessing over everything and looking at the maths and seeing how it's all going to work out. But
if you remember the last time we were up here in this sort of neck of the woods looking for Champions League was under Pardew, and we managed to botch that up. We were well and truly clear in the top 4, and we threw that away. I can't see the same thing happening under Howe. I think he's We may have a blip like the Aston Villa game, but I think the response has been absolutely phenomenal from the players, and I just can't see us dropping enough points. I don't think the players will. I don't think that the manager will allow it.
That Pardew season as well, like we were quite lucky in quite a few games, and the goal difference was, I think the goal difference was +1 or something in the end. It was really narrow. So even though we were kind of in it in the last few games, we weren't the fourth best team in the league by any stretch. You know, this time we are definitely. I'd say,
and that's the thing. We are up there on merit, and you know, it's like we've got 6 games to go, and people are still kind of not really giving us the credit. It's like, oh, Everton played badly. Oh, Spurs defense is crap. Like, hang on a bit. Newcastle are playing good football. They've got good players who are all hitting form at the same time right now, and we're scoring some absolutely like world-class goals. From build-up play. It's not like we're scoring fluky goals. So on that note, I'm going to pull out some stats because one of the things that is really starting to piss me off right now is this narrative that's being spouted by media, by fans of the other top clubs in the league that are kind of a little bit miffed that we're raining on their parade at the moment. Is that, you know, we're only where we are because we spent big money, and we've got rich owners now, and you know, we're rubbing everyone's noses in it. And it's like, well, no, we're celebrating the fact that we're playing absolutely out of our skin, and we're touching distance of getting back into the Champions League. But Craig and Lee have been doing their best to pull out the stats from the internet for us. So 70.4% of our goals this season, so that's 45 of our 64 goals that we've scored from all games, all appearances, are by players that were here before the takeover. That is pretty impressive, to be honest, and I think that's kind of going under the radar a lot in terms of what Eddie Howe's getting out of players that were probably out of the door had he not come in. If Steve Bruce was still here, we'd be probably sitting here talking about Longstaff at another club, Shah at another club, Murphy's probably out on loan again, Joelinton, who knows what would have happened to him. So from that point of view, it's like we're developing the players that we already had. And from an interesting point of view from the game that we just had, Newcastle's starting 11 cost us 220 million quid. Everton starting 11 cost them 216 million pounds. So it's like a 4 million pound difference. And there's 34-point difference in the league. So I can't say that it's all about the money. And I think people need to kind of reel that narrative in a little bit, because it's really underselling the job that Eddie Howe's been doing for us.
Our club has done good recruitment in terms of the players and in terms of the manager as well, because Howe has managed to, I talked about this in the Spurs review game, but he's managed to just turn underperforming players into valuable assets. Joelinton and Murphy, to name just 2. I guess one of the arguments would be that the better players that we've brought in have improved the players around them, and that's fair. That's fair enough. But you can have all the money in the world, like you just said, and if you don't spend it properly, like, you know, lots of teams have done this over time. Yeah, exactly. Chelsea, Sunderland have done it previously. And then Villa have done it to an extent as well. You need to be able to have good scouting to spend it properly. If anybody wants to come and talk to us about and have this argument with us, anybody from any media anywhere wants to, then we can have the argument. We can talk to them about it, and we've got everything to back up what we're saying. We know what we're talking about. The national media, who might watch Newcastle once every month or so, they don't know what they're talking about. They just see Saudi money. It's always going to be something that's thrown at us, so we always have to accept it and get used to it. But if somebody wants to come and talk seriously about it, we can throw all the facts in the world at them, and we can direct them to look at guys like Joelinton, Murphy, Fabian Shah. We can do that all day long if they want to do that, because it's not just to do with the money. It's to do with having a brilliant manager and a recruitment team that are doing a fantastic job.
Well, this is the thing. We spent 40 million on Joelinton, and he looked like an absolute cart horse under Steve Bruce. So, you know, we still spent the money, but just because you spend the money, it doesn't give you a good player. It comes down to how you're coaching them, how you're using them, and the players that you have around them, and how everyone's linking up. So I'm going to put this up. Hopefully we don't get busted for copywriting because totally pulled this off the internet. I want to say absolutely fantastic. This was our first win with the Saudi coloured strip. So the curse has been lifted. I will be wearing this at the next meetup. Hopefully we can break the meetup curse as well, because we do have a meetup coming up for the Leeds game at the Pig and Whistle in Brisbane. There'll be other meetups around Australia. And we've yet to experience a win since we started doing the Brisbane meetups. I'm hoping that we've broken the Saudi kit curse. Hopefully we'll break the meetup curse and get 3 points against Leeds in that game as well. So yeah, fingers crossed. I still don't know what's going on in this photo with Richie though. He looks like he's been chopped in half. Yeah, trying out for the next Wizard of Oz.
That picture just shows you that they need a new stadium, don't they? I think
that is an awful changing room.
Is that Mark Gillespie or someone's put their fist through one of the tiles in the roof?
Yeah.
They need to
just copying Lee.
Yeah.
After his meetup punching in the ceiling. It is very, very apt though that, and I don't think it's done unintentionally, that Anthony Gordon is sat there with a huge grin on his face, front and center and amongst the whole team. That's a pretty nice feeling for him. I think some justification after his treatment pre-game and during the transfer. So that was quite good. So let's have a really quick run through onto the Southampton game. Mainly because we don't have time with the quick schedule to do an independent preview. So we're going to tack that on to the end of this one. So we've actually played Southampton 3 times already this season, because we actually played them in the Cup semi-final. So we had a home and away versus them in that game. It was the semi-final, wasn't it? Yeah. So we had a league 4-1 league away win. Almiron, Chris Wood scored in that game. So that tells you what was going on there. Willock and Bruno with the other goals. We had a 1-0 away win in the Cup where Joelinton scored the winner in that game. Southampton did have a red card for Saladakar. And then we followed that up with a 2-1 home win where Longstaff scored twice. But unfortunately, Shea Adams brought one back. Didn't make it any difference to us. But that was the game with that Bruno red card. That was the one that saw him out for 3 games in the lead up to that Cup final. We were lucky that he managed to just sort of work it out so that we would still get him for the Cup final. But you know, we kind of lost a little bit of momentum with him out of the side. So that's a little bit gutting. But you know, let's get on to the team lineup. So for Newcastle, we've effectively figured that Eddie Howe's going to revert back to the team that absolutely trounced Spurs at home. So Murphy and Isak come in the front in the forward line, and Byrne potentially at left back again. Do you agree with that team lineup? You see any changes or anything that might sort of like swing it a different way?
No, I think that's probably likely. I just wonder whether this game we might try Wilson and Isak together up front, or Isak out on the left. If we're going to try it, it'll be either in a home game like this or after we've already confirmed Champions League, because I think it would be good to see it. But I think we're certainly not going to change the formation. So if we were to do that, it would probably be Isak on the left. But there's probably no need at this stage to do it. It's just one of them is going to be left out, which is very unlucky, because you've got to feel sorry for anyone who scores 2 goals and then misses out on the next game. It might come down to who's got the better sort of fitness, or the GPS tracking fitness data and stuff that they go through, which will probably be Isak if that's the case. But Wilson will be raging to be left out after scoring 2 goals, but that's what happens when you're a big club and when you've got good players in competition for places. So I wouldn't be surprised if Wilson or Isak start the game, but I think definitely Murphy will come back, and I think Byrne will slot back out left back.
Yeah, I think Miggy didn't really have a great game, as we mentioned earlier. So Murphy coming back in for him, give Miggy a little bit of time to readjust back into the team a bit more. I think it was important to kind of rotate with the quick succession of games and give Murphy maybe a little bit more of a break. That debate between Isak and Wilson. I mean, it's such a nice thing to have, and we've got 3 players now in double figures for the season in terms of goals. Joelinton's doing his best to catch up, and if Murphy keeps going the way he's doing, it's like he might sort of chip in to get into double figures as well. So we're starting to get a nice little sort of spread of goals throughout that side. It's going to be interesting to see what happens long term, because I still think that we need another backup for the forward line. We know that Wilson is going to get injured at some point. He always does. So when he's on form, it's great, but you can't rely on him to be playing 38 games a season, let alone if we're in Europe as well. So yeah, we need some sort of backup, and it's how Eddie Howe kind of manages those players. But at the moment, look, it's a great problem for Eddie Howe to have, is who do we play, Isak or Wilson, and they both seem to be spurring each other on to absolutely fantastic things, and they both seem pretty lighthearted and good with it between themselves as well. They're cheering each other on whenever they're scoring, knowing full well that might see them on the bench for the next game.
It's just great management. It's just and everything's better when you're winning, obviously, as well. So everything's fine. But like I said before about Wilson, he looked he was just unfit. He didn't look fit, and he'd been sick, I think. So that international break was huge for him, and he came on and scored against Man United because he just got his sharpness back. But he's back to his best. He's probably in his best form he's ever been for us. So yeah, it's a good headache to have as a manager, and this is what we want all over the pitch. We're going to be fighting on 4 fronts next season. We're going to be in some kind of European competition. So we need quality backup all over. And the bench, this is even without Anthony Gordon as well, who's signed for 45 million. He's going to come into the team at some point as well. So it's looking so much better than it was earlier in the season.
Yeah, for sure. So on to the Southampton game. So I've pulled this out of the team lineup that played this morning for us against Bournemouth, lost 1-0. So McCarthy in goal, Kyle Walker-Peters at right back, Benarek, Saleta-Carr, and Perraud making up the back 4. Elanusi on the right, Armstrong on the left, Lavia and Ward-Prowse making up the midfield, and then Walcott and Alcaraz up front. The old 4-4-2, which we tend not to see very much of these days. Now, on paper, do you see that as a team that we should be worried about particular players, other than obviously Ward-Prowse and his free kicks? I mean, Theo Walcott's kind of pushing on a bit now. I'm still surprised he's playing at this level. Do you see any problem areas with that, or are you looking to the fact that we've beat them 3 times already, we're on form, we're at home, and they're literally sinking like a stone?
Well, they did get a point at Arsenal, and they got a point at Old Trafford, so they can go to big good teams and get a point and get a result. So we just have to be wary of that. We'll have to not be complacent in any way, which I'm sure that we won't be. But really, we should be dominating this. Like, Lavia's played well in some games as well, and he's been pretty good. But they're quite young and inexperienced, and a lot of the team, and the rest of it just kind of lacks quality. So we just really need to make sure we're not complacent. Try and get an early goal or 2 like we did with Longstaff in the Cup. And it should be a comfortable win, but yeah, it's Newcastle. So we just have to bear that in mind. But yeah, we really should be winning this. And I think they're almost down pretty much. That was a terrible result for them this morning. So I think they need to win 3 of the last 5 or 6 to stay up. And that's just doesn't look like it's going to happen.
Yeah, hopefully an early goal kind of just knocks their necks in a bit, and they fold. We get a nice easy run, score another couple of goals. Everyone's loving it, and the home crowd get to enjoy what we had on the road, and another great home victory like we had with Spurs. So that's I'm pretty sure that's the place that we need to call it. We've gone on long enough. I think everyone's just a bit excited at the moment. I know I am. So I guess we'll finish off with a match prediction for the Southampton game. So what's your prediction for that one?
I hadn't really thought about this. We're not keeping many clean sheets at the minute, so 3-1.
Yeah, so that was one point that I was going to bring up. Actually, we may as well touch on it quickly. Clean sheets, short supply at the moment. Doesn't seem to be a major issue for us given that we are scoring more goals now. Do you think that's just complacency because we are scoring more goals? Are we pushing forward more that we're leaving ourselves exposed? Is it just one of those things? I mean, we're still sitting there with the best goal difference in the league. We're still best defense in the league. Are you seeing any problem with a lack of clean sheets, or is it just...
Well, if you're scoring 6 and 4 goals, it's not a problem.
Really
Right. I think that we've conceded from corners a few times. Obviously, we've conceded direct from a corner today, which was a bit of a strange one. Yeah. But I don't think it's like a kind of structural problem within the defense. It's just we've been a little bit sloppy at times, or we've made defensive mistakes, but it hasn't been sort of, major cause for concern. But talking about the goals we've scored as well, I did a little look back last season at Steve Bruce's time and at this season. So we've scored 4+ goals in 7 league games this season. Yeah, wow. We did that twice in Steve Bruce's 2 years. So that's partly why it all feels like a dream as well, because we're just scoring so many goals. Yeah. And when you get to games and you lose track of who scored when, and like I said, in the Spurs game, I got to half time and completely forgot about Joelinton's goal, even though it was amazing. Yeah. So when that's happening, that's why it feels like a dream. But yeah, I think with the Southampton game, we should have enough for them. We should dominate the midfield. But I hope we just get an early goal so that the nerves don't start setting in, and so they don't get a bit of confidence like they did at Arsenal.
Yeah, I'm going to go for an early goal and a runaway victory of 3-0. I think we're in form, and if we score early, we're gonna push on. So we'll call it there. Thank you very much for joining me, Jack, and thanks very much for everyone for listening and watching on YouTube. And yeah, keep an eye out for the watch along live on Sunday night for us, 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock at night for us, I think it is. So we'll be half asleep, but we'll try and keep everyone entertained with our banter. So thanks very much. I'll catch you later.
Cheers. See you later. Bye.